Kash Patel didn't just arrest a judge, he staged a public humiliation. He splashed her mugshot online like it was some kind of trophy, proof of his loyalty to power. But what looked like a single arrest was really something much darker, a glimpse into a political blueprint where justice is bent into a weapon. Representative Maylene Dean saw it immediately. She cut through the spectacle and exposed what Patel was really doing, turning the FBI into a tool of revenge. This wasn't about law and order, it was about control, intimidation, and reshaping democracy itself. Think about that for a moment, a federal agency designed to protect Americans being used to settle scores.
Request that states that, quote, the undoing of the weaponization of the FBI is one of the administration's top priorities. The weaponization of the FBI is something that deeply concerns me. It should concern all of us. And yet, since taking office, President Trump has been on a revenge tour. He has targeted individuals, universities, law firms, with executive orders to cut them out or to make them come under his will. He has used ICE to disappear U.S. citizens without due process, and he's fully ignored a unanimous Supreme Court order, and then over the weekend wasn't sure if he was obligated to uphold the Constitution of the United States. In your book, your recent book, Government Gangsters, you include an appendix with a list of names that people have referred to as an enemies list. Now, I know you will claim it's just an appendix, not an enemies list. So let's focus on how the president sees it, on what the president calls it. And you proudly display his quote on the front cover of your book. The president calls this a brilliant roadmap, a blueprint, and I have not even raised your storied children's book, The Plot Against the King. It concerns me how many people from this blueprint have been targeted with executive orders and FBI investigations. The FBI cannot be weaponized, and under your leadership, it has been nothing but a weapon alongside the president to go after the president's perceived opponents, to stifle dissent and free speech. A few weeks ago, as we saw through a social media post that you quickly deleted, the FBI arrested a judge in Wisconsin for correctly asking ICE officials if they had a judicial warrant instead of an administrative warrant, which they did not have. Despite this judge following the law, on the morning of April the 25th, the FBI arrested the judge in an escalation of the weaponization of the FBI under your leadership. Let me be clear. A functioning democracy does not lock up judges. I am gravely concerned about the utter lack of independence of the FBI and its weaponization under your leadership. I am concerned that the president is using this book, your book, as a blueprint, as he has said. It's a blueprint for revenge. And I am concerned that your eagerness, a childlike giddiness to carry out the president's revenge tour, you've shown yourself to be unserious in your statements before you were sworn in and some after. You've shown yourself unfit to lead this important agency. I was an impeachment manager for President Trump's second impeachment. It was a sad, solemn duty. And so I wanted to ask you about that. Mr. Patel, as you and the president continue to weaponize and investigate his perceived enemies, as you follow this blueprint, when can I, a former impeachment manager, expect the FBI at my door?
Ma'am, you want to know who was targeted by a weaponized FBI? Me. You want to know how and why?
Well,
you want to know what I'm doing to fix it?
That. Let me move on.
Well, you should read the book because there's no enemies
So-
list on that book.
So
There are
you-
people that violated their constitutional obligations and their duties to the American people.
That's good. You
And they
gave
were
them due
rightly
process.
called out.
I'm
And
changing
you should
topics.
give that book to every one of your constituents so they can read about it.
I won't be doing that.
That's their loss.
During your Senate confirmation hearings, you repeatedly denied having any involvement as a private citizen in the firing of FBI officials who engaged in the prosecution against January 6 insurrectionists, the violent rioters who beat and killed Capitol police officers, and whom you referred to as political prisoners. Since then, multiple whistleblowers have come forward, and we know that you likely committed perjury. At the same hearing, you claimed you were not familiar with Stu Peters, an anti-Semitic Holocaust denier. despite the fact that you appeared on Mr. Peters' podcast 8 separate times. 8 times. And you claimed not to recall. Mr. Patel, my second question is, should we worry more about your memory or your veracity?
We should worry more about your lack of candor. You're accusing me of committing perjury.
Veracity?
Tell the American
You didn't
people how
know?
I broke the law and committed a felony.
You
Have
did.
the audacity to actually
No,
put the
all
facts
right, then the
forward
answer is
instead of
both.
lying for political banter so you can have a 20-second
answer
donation hit.
The answer is both. I believe that the
The
men and
answer is
women of
you're
the,
failing,
excuse me,
not
I
me.
reclaim my time.
Go ahead.
Mr. Patel, I believe that the members of the FBI, and I know many of them, many retired, 38,000 people, as you say, it's a little less than that now, deserve the very best, deserve extraordinary independence, deserve freedom from the fears of being investigated, the freedom of coming forward to make sure they're doing their job. And I'll end with this, that I think it's interesting that in your proposal today, you find yourself at a gulf of difference between you and the president. I wonder how you will resolve that. Will you go to the president and say, we need $11.2 billion, not what you cut out of here? You're asking for more than $1 billion than the president's request. Are you going to go to the president and straighten out that gulf?
I'll do what I've always done and represent the American people, defend this country, and make sure the Constitution is always upheld and the FBI is never weaponized. Maybe you should do the same.
So you agree with the president when he says he doesn't know if he should uphold his constitutional duty?
If you want to just keep putting words in my mouth, the TV cameras are outside.
I thank you. I yield back. Again, this is an unserious moment, sadly, for the FBI. I yield back.
More so for you.
Mr. Strong.
The mugshot wasn't just an image, it was a message, a warning of how far they're willing to go. And the question that follows is even more disturbing. If a judge can be paraded like this, who's safe next? The arrest of Judge Dugan should have been routine, if it ever should have happened at all. But under Kash Patel, nothing about it was normal. On April 25, FBI agents showed up and hauled a sitting judge into custody for questioning ICE officers about their lack of a proper judicial warrant. That alone raised eyebrows. But Patel went even further. He blasted out her mugshot across social media before a trial, before a conviction, before a single fact had been tested in court. It wasn't justice, it was theater. Department of Justice guidelines exist for a reason: to protect the presumption of innocence, to stop mob justice before it starts, and to preserve trust in the system. Patel threw all of that aside with a single post. A judge following the law was paraded like a criminal, and Patel turned her face into propaganda. That mugshot was never about accountability, it was a message, a warning to anyone who dared push back. And if a federal judge can be humiliated like this, what chance does an ordinary citizen have? When Representative Maylene Dean got her turn to question Kash Patel, she didn't waste a second. She didn't treat this like a routine hearing. She treated it like an emergency. Looking Patel straight in the eye, she said what millions were already thinking: this wasn't law enforcement, this was political theater dressed up as justice. She exposed the real danger, that the FBI under Patel wasn't acting as an independent agency but as a weapon in service of personal revenge. Dean cut right through Patel's excuses. She laid out how his own book, Government Gangsters, had been praised as a blueprint for revenge. She pressed Patel on the so-called appendix, a list of names critics said looked more like an enemies list, and she connected it all back to that mugshot, showing that Patel wasn't enforcing the law equally, he was targeting opponents and making examples of them. Dean's confrontation wasn't just about one case or one judge, it was about a system being twisted into something unrecognizable, and she made it clear, if Congress didn't stop it, the damage would go far beyond Patel himself. What made Maylene Dean's warning hit harder was the evidence she put on the record. In Patel's own book, Government Gangsters, there's an appendix filled with names, officials, lawyers, public servants, people who dared to stand in the way. Patel insists it's not an enemies list. But then the book itself was described as a roadmap, a blueprint for what comes next. That wasn't speculation, that was written into its very pages. Dean drew a straight line from Patel's writings to the praise it received, to the arrests and investigations that followed. This wasn't about cleaning up corruption or restoring faith in government. It was about codifying revenge into a manual, turning political grudges into federal policy, and the mugshot of Judge Dugan. It suddenly looked less like an isolated act of aggression and more like the first page of that blueprint coming to life. For Dean, the message was undeniable. Patel wasn't just enforcing the law, he was following a playbook designed to punish, humiliate, and eliminate opponents. And the blueprint, she warned, was only beginning to unfold. The arrest of Judge Dugan was explosive, but it wasn't the only example. Maylin Dean reminded everyone that Patel's FBI had gone far beyond one courtroom. Citizens were reportedly detained by ICE without judicial warrants, stripped of due process in a way that made the Constitution look optional. Universities and law firms that pushed back against federal overreach suddenly found themselves cut off by executive orders. Even a unanimous Supreme Court ruling was brushed aside as if the highest court in the land carried no weight. This wasn't random, it was systemic. The pattern was unmistakable. Those who aligned with the administration's orbit were shielded, while those who questioned or resisted were singled out, investigated, or humiliated. The government's most powerful law enforcement body wasn't acting as a neutral guardian of justice, it was behaving like a political enforcer. Dean connected the dots, making it clear that Patel wasn't just an FBI director. He was carrying out a strategy weaponizing the machinery of government to silence dissent. And if unchecked, she warned, this creeping abuse would become the new normal. If the blueprint wasn't alarming enough, Maylin Dean went straight for Patel's credibility, and what she laid out was devastating. During his Senate confirmation, Patel swore under oath that he had no role as a private citizen in the firing of FBI officials tied to the January 6 prosecutions. But since then, whistleblowers have surfaced, painting a very different picture. Their testimony suggested Patel was far more involved than he admitted, raising the specter of perjury, lying to Congress about his role in purging officials who investigated violent rioters. Then came the Stu Peters problem. Patel claimed under oath that he didn't even know the far-right extremist and Holocaust denier, yet records show he appeared on Peters' podcast not once, not twice, but 8 separate times. 8 times. Dean didn't let it slide. She asked the question bluntly, was this staggering memory failure, or deliberate deceit? Patel snapped back with deflections, accusing Dean of political theater. But the exchange revealed something bigger, that the man steering the FBI was already caught in a pattern of denial, evasion, and distortion. And if his word couldn't be trusted under oath, why should the country trust him with the nation's most powerful badge? Maylin Dean's next point cut even deeper. The FBI's independence was collapsing under Patel's leadership. For more than a century, the Bureau was supposed to be the shield, protecting Americans regardless of politics, standing above the noise of partisan fights. But under Patel, that shield was turning into a cudgel. Cases weren't being pursued to uphold the law, they were being pursued to send a message. Dean made it clear that when the FBI is used to intimidate political opponents, trust evaporates. Every arrest, every prosecution starts to look like payback instead of justice. The presumption of innocence, the foundation of the legal system, gets replaced with public humiliation and spectacle. The mugshot of Judge Dugan wasn't just a picture, it was proof that independence had been thrown out the window, and Patel's responses only confirmed the danger. Instead of addressing concerns, he doubled down, bragging about his book, brushing off whistleblowers and mocking questions about his credibility. The message to Congress was chilling. Under his watch, the FBI wasn't just drifting from independence, it was being re-engineered into an enforcement arm for political revenge. By the time Dean finished, the pattern was impossible to ignore. This wasn't about one mugshot or one controversial arrest, it was a strategy calculated, deliberate, and already in motion. The so-called blueprint praised in Patel's book was unfolding step by step: arrests that looked like personal vendettas, executive orders that punished critics, perjury that blurred accountability. All of it pointed to the same destination: a justice system warped into a weapon. And history offers a chilling reminder. Democracies don't usually fall with a single dramatic collapse. They erode piece by piece, through small abuses that people dismiss as politics as usual. A mugshot here, a retaliatory investigation there, until suddenly the system no longer serves the people, it serves the powerful. Patel's behavior wasn't a glitch in the system, it was the system being rewritten in real time. Dean warned that if Congress didn't act, the message would be clear: loyalty mattered more than law, obedience mattered more than truth. And once that line is crossed, there's no easy way back. The blueprint wasn't just theory anymore, it was the operating manual for dismantling democracy. When the dust settled, it was clear this hearing wasn't just about Kash Patel's arrogance or Mailing Dean's persistence, it was about the fate of the justice system itself. A single mugshot had turned into a symbol of how power can be twisted into humiliation, how a federal agency built to protect Americans can be redirected to punish them. Dean's warning wasn't abstract, it was a roadmap of what happens when independence dies and loyalty takes its place. The danger wasn't hidden, it was right there, on display in Patel's words, in his book, in the selective prosecutions in public spectacles. Democracies don't collapse overnight, they crumble when the public shrugs, when abuses are normalized, when silence outweighs resistance. That's the real threat Patel represents. So the choice isn't complicated: either we call this out for what it is, a blueprint for revenge disguised as justice, or we watch the lines blur until there's nothing left to defend. Because if judges can be paraded, if whistleblowers can be silenced, if perjury can be brushed off, then no one is safe. If you believe justice should never be weaponized, share this, stay alert, and don't look away.